Hello, and thank you for your interest in this video presentation. My name is Dr. Grace Dixon, and I am a senior lecturer at the Singapore University of Technology and Design. As this presentation is for an international audience, I opted to have a generated voiceover so that the automatic closed captions offered by YouTube can transcribe the voice accurately. Do turn the captions on if you prefer. A transcript of the video should also be available in the options. Please be assured that the content is not AI generated and that the examples provided all come from my personal experience. My goal for this presentation is to demonstrate how instructors can create their own simulations for classroom teaching and that it is not something that requires much technical knowledge. In fact, if you have already amassed a range of classroom activities and exercises, the simulation allows you to incorporate classwork in a fun and engaging context. This presentation will move through several sections. I will first provide a short introduction to the simulation I created and show you what the student sees upon entering the simulation. I will then walk through the various critical thinking activities that the student has to complete while playing the simulation, followed by the results from the student responses. I will also explain how the results give you an insight to the class, which then helps you to target the observed gaps in their knowledge and/or skills. Finally, I will outline the steps you can take to create your own simulation. Before I proceed, allow me to just say two things. Firstly, the simulation presented in this presentation was created and developed entirely by myself with the aid of available technology for classroom teaching. Please excuse the lack of sophistication in the images, story, dialogue, and so on. Secondly, I relied on LiveCase, a service provider whose website allows you to create a simulation and host it on their site. I do not receive any form of reward for mentioning their site, but I am grateful for their permission to include it in this presentation. As you can tell from the title, the simulation is about solving a homicide that has occurred at a burger joint. My inspiration for this came from Lawrence Treat's The Lunchroom Murder, and you can find many other mysteries in his book Crime and Puzzlement. Unlike The Lunchroom Murder, I deliberately avoided naming the incident as a murder but framed the challenge as one where you had to conclude if the incident was a murder or a mishap based on the evidence available. Very simply, in this simulation, the player's role is that of a newly appointed police officer. The investigative team addresses this person as newbie. Their task is to determine if the homicide was the result of a mishap or a murder and present their findings to the head of the precinct. The learning objectives for this activity is to learn to accurately interpret evidence and deduce what happened at the scene. And the measurable outcome is to offer a conclusion based on the available evidence and the reasons for arriving at that conclusion. There are 4 non-player characters, or NPCs in gaming parlance, in this simulation. I kept the cast small as I wanted this simulation to be played and debriefed within a 2-hour tutorial. I have dramatized the opening scene and dialogue in the next slide as this is a video. But students will read through the dialogue when they first enter the simulation, and they can easily return to it again when analyzing the clues and evidence. You can check out other simulations at LiveCase or Harvard Business Educational Resources if you want examples of longer and more involved simulations.
Detective Sim. A call came in from Parsley's Burger at 9:30 p.m. Go investigate and give me a report to decide what kind of case this is. Officer Molly will assist. Oh, and bring along the newbie.
Yes, Chief. Sigh. There goes my Friday night. Come along, newbie. Let's see how good your detective skills are.
Hello, Detective Sim and newbie. You sure made it here quickly. I have cordoned off the area, and the waiter, Joe, who is the only witness, is ready to speak to you.
Hello, Detective. It has been so stressful. There is a dead man and money has been stolen. The boss is going to kill me. Please figure out what happened and explain it to him before he fires me.
Hello, Joe. Please calm down. Can you tell me what happened here?
The guy on the floor over there. He's a regular customer. Works at a nearby company and came in for dinner at about 8:30 p.m. 3 other men came at about the same time and they had dinner together at the counter over there. After they paid, I went to the kitchen with some of their plates. When I returned to clear the other plates, I saw the cash register open and some of the money was gone. Those men must have taken it and ran away. and then I saw the man on the floor. The floor looked wet and I thought he had slipped and knocked himself out. When I checked on him, he was already dead. I called the police immediately.
Did you notice anything unusual when you were serving their meals or when they paid?
Well, they did seem kind of tense, but who isn't stressed and tired on a Friday night? I could hear some harsh whispers like, "Don't you dare tell," but it's quite common among the people who work around here. Oh, I did find it strange that the mop and bucket were nearby. I cleaned the floor before dinner time and put it away. Someone must have dragged it over.
Thank you, Joe. In the meantime, I'll look around. What do you have so far? Officer Molly.
My initial findings are as follows, sir. The victim is male, about 40 to 45 years old, 1.6 meters tall with a slim build. His name tag says Conrad Small. The victim has a swollen lump on his forehead and red marks on the back of his neck. It is likely someone grabbed the back of his neck and pushed his head towards the counter. Kind of like this.
Cute cat. Yes, that is plausible. However, hitting the forehead is unlikely to cause death, as the injury seems minimal. We will need to check if he has any other health issues.
I hope the dialogue gave you a sense of how the story unfolds. There are of course different ways to play. Students can do so individually or in pairs or any creative way you can think of. Nevertheless, let me get to the core goal of this simulation, which is to develop critical thinking skills. There were a total of 7 tasks and questions embedded in the simulation. The first 4 were open to all players, while the final 3 questions were a hidden challenge that was accessed only if the 4th question was correctly answered. Each question tested different types of thinking, and I will elaborate on them in the following slide. First task a student encounters is to evaluate if the broken cash register is an important clue. Seeing an open cash register with money spilled over might raise some suspicions, but it does not necessarily mean a robbery has occurred. There could be other explanations, and it is important to consider the context and look for other signs before jumping to conclusions. 4 potential answers are given and students select one, much like a multi-choice question. The thinking process required here is evaluative thinking or analytical thinking. It involves assessing a situation by considering various possible explanations and weighing evidence before drawing a conclusion. This is a key component of critical thinking, which emphasizes observation, analysis, inference, and evaluation. The second task students encounter is to arrange the sequence of events leading to the death of the victim. Sequencing events in a timeline involves chronological thinking. This process includes organizing events in the order they occurred, which helps in understanding the cause and effect relationships and the progression of events over time. Chronological thinking is closely related to critical thinking in terms of understanding context, identifying patterns, cause and effect, and evaluating evidence. Organizing information chronologically is a methodical approach that ensures your reasoning is grounded in a clear understanding of how events unfold over time. The third task is to make connections between the claims and evidence. This is a key aspect of logical reasoning and argumentation, both of which are integral to critical thinking. This process involves several steps: identifying claims, gathering evidence, and analyzing relationships by examining how the evidence supports or contradicts the claims. And finally, students have to arrive at a conclusion as to whether the incident was a murder or a mishap. This 4th task was also presented as a multi-choice question. I initially wanted it to be an open-ended question where students could present their reasoning. However, at that point, the simulation could not process multiple answers. Nevertheless, an MCQ format allowed me to set up a hidden challenge, which delighted the students and made them really pay attention to answering the 4th question. The hidden challenge takes the student back to the initial clues of the cash register, the wet floor and mop, and Joe the waiter. The questions were again in MCQ format, as only a correct answer would trigger the next question. In this series of questions, distinguishing between relevant and irrelevant clues involved both inductive and deductive reasoning, depending on the question. In critical thinking, both types of reasoning are valuable. Inductive reasoning helps in forming hypotheses and identifying patterns, while deductive reasoning helps in testing hypotheses and applying general principles to specific situations. While several students made it to the hidden challenge, only 2 out of the 89 students who played made it to the end of the challenge. I will discuss some of the results and their implications in the following slides. There were a total of 89 students who played through the simulation when I first launched it. 56 students were in their first year at that time and 33 students were in their 4th year. The results showed that in question 1, the majority answered correctly. In question 2, the juniors took more time but arranged the events more accurately. In terms of connecting claims and evidence, the seniors did much better. And in coming to a conclusion regarding the homicide, both juniors and seniors required more development in this aspect. The results indicated that the juniors did fine on analysis and sequencing but not so well on connecting claims and evidence and drawing conclusions. With the results, I conducted a deeper debrief on the 3rd and 4th tasks. Other exercises to develop those skills could also be given as homework. For many of these first-year students, they said it was their first time learning through a simulation and they enjoyed the engagement and gaming type experience. The seniors did well on analysis and connecting claims and evidence. From my observations, they could have done better on the sequencing task had they not been racing each other. The 4th task on drawing conclusions was surprisingly poor given their answers to question 3. In order to find out why, a group discussion, followed by a class discussion, was conducted with a focus on how and why they arrived at their conclusions. The 2 students who made it through the hidden challenge also shared their thought and reasoning process. In terms of feedback, the class offered suggestions for improving the simulation but said they enjoyed learning through the simulation. As this simulation was the first I had ever developed and launched, I think it was a worthwhile effort and the results gave me more targeted and specific insights in teaching critical thinking across different levels of students. When I was a student, it was the time of black and white transparencies, clunky square projectors and white chalk on blackboards for instruction. Fast forward to our digital age and the vast array of instructional tools, where if you were like me, you are almost at a loss for what to do or where to begin. In this space between analog and digital, I have found that simulations are a bit of the old and a bit of the new. At its core, simulations are stories, where the story has a learning objective. The simulation I created was based on a simple detective solving a case storyline. With the help of service providers and AI, you can create your own simulation, geared for your teaching needs and the students under your care. Many of the points highlighted here are not new and we go through them while preparing for class. The difference is how you connect what you already have or plan to do, with the technology available, to create something unique and specific for your teaching purposes. The key I found to making the simulation successful was to iterate, test, calibrate and repeat that cycle with colleagues, friends, current and former students. Pretty much anyone who is willing to run the simulation and offer feedback. The most significant investment is your time and creative energy. I found the process new and interesting. Some parts were tedious, but the overall outcome was satisfying and purposeful. I hope this presentation has given you a sense of what a simulation can do in teaching critical thinking, and if you have any ideas or feedback, my contact details are in the final slide. Thank you for your kind attention. If you would like further information, please email me at grace_dixon@sutd.edu.sg.